Hey everyone, it's Adaptive Goddess, and today I'm going to be talking about the escalation cycle. I'm here with my mom so that she can give more parental input and some examples, because when I'm in an escalation cycle, I don't necessarily know my behaviors or kind of what is really going on because my brain is focused in being in the cycle. So here's someone who kind of lived the cycle with me. You ready to start?
I think I am.
Yay! So the first phase of an escalation cycle is called the calm phase. This is what people would consider baseline. They're very compliant. They're very perceptive or receptive to like praise, to any kind of like critique or minor correction of any kind of behavior.
I mean, you're just kind of interacting as if everything is going along pretty expected. I don't want to say necessarily normal because that's different for everyone, but as long as everything kind of feels like there's no stress, maybe a little bit of stress, but you're just kind of doing what you thought you were doing.
Yeah, you're doing the same old routine. So if someone's like really bubbly, they're going to be really bubbly. If there's someone who's kind of like ear, who's a little bit more down in the they're more down in the
Yeah, it's just going to feel like you're just going along.
Yes. So the next phase is trigger, and this is when the person who is going to be in the escalation cycle is responding to a stimuli. This can either be memory-based or it can be sensory-based.
And it can sometimes come unexpected and not be noticed. Sometimes I wouldn't notice your trigger, and I would be surprised later on that we were already in a different phase, not knowing what the trigger was. So sometimes understanding what the trigger is really helpful.
Yes. So like for me, I know like a memory-based trigger is something like me getting interrupted, especially by like my brother. But another like sensory thing is spicy food. Like I can get really triggered from really spicy food.
Oh yeah, and then all of a sudden you don't like the
everything
food at all anymore. Is that kind of like the trigger of where's my Christmas tree stand?
That's, I think, memory based.
Okay.
Because it's not like a sensation that was happening.
Right. So that would be a memory-based one where we were going along and setting up the Christmas tree, get the box, you open it, and it's
there's no base.
And that, what does that trigger? What does that look like?
So, well, the trigger is just this one instant. It can literally be a snap of the fingers. It can be just one instant you're in the phase.
Right. But what was it? What do you think if you needed to pinpoint it for the Christmas tree?
Oh, what that trigger was. I think just the stand not being in the box and it bringing up things of like, I have always been able to like put my stuff away very neatly and very organized. So it kind of brought up like, I'm not going to find it again.
Okay. So that worry, not the something is wrong here and it's not the way I expected it to be.
No, it was more of the memory of sometimes when I lose things or something's not there, I never find it again.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's what my memory was going to.
Okay.
So once the trigger has hit, if no outside intervention or internal intervention has happened, then you can get into the agitation phase. And this one, I think, is one of the most complicated phases of this whole cycle.
Why?
Well, because there's a variety of behaviors. It's very unique to whoever's in the escalation cycle.
Okay.
And it can be very like contradictory behavior. So like I remember when I would get into this phase, I would like yell at you guys like, I need a hug, I need a hug, I need a hug, but like be actively pushing you guys away.
Yeah, and I remember it goes into a lot of confusing arguing that doesn't necessarily make sense. It's all it seems to all be very emotionally based, and confusing emotions, and probably because like the stage name says agitation, which is kind of this emotional unstable area where a lot of confusion is starting to happen and you're starting to get flooded or irritated. Yeah.
So this is when the brain is starting to get flooded. Not a lot of they'll start to become more non-compliant. There may be some rumbling signs. If you're very attuned to the person, this is when you kind of start to notice there's a problem. But if there's, again, no intervention, the person will move on to the escalation phase. And this is when all of the non-compliance, there may be some minor aggression, a lot of the minor behaviors that we would consider to be either problematic or challenging will ramp all the way up.
And it can sneak up on you.
Yes.
It can definitely go from trigger to agitation to acceleration really quickly. And all of a sudden you're confronted with, weren't we just fine a minute ago?
Yes.
And weren't we just looking for the Christmas tree base? And all of a sudden it's about, where did you put it? Why have you done this to me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really mad at you. My Christmas is ruined. And it's just whoa, wow. How did we get there?
Yeah.
Especially if we didn't even start looking for the Christmas tree base yet.
Yes. And so for someone who isn't so attuned to the person or is not so aware, this is when people would say, oh, this is when the problem started, when it actually started 2 phases back with the trigger.
Well, because I guess that's when I realized I'm having a problem with you.
Yes.
Or not
There's
just
a
that,
problem.
but I remember with the Christmas tree base that it was, everything was still okay. And from my perspective, maybe I was still a couple of steps back. And again, not realizing, because like you said, it kind of escalates without you really understanding what's happening. And taking a step back definitely would have helped if I had understood what was there.
Yes.
Because then, especially around Christmas time, I mean, you don't want to be upset and you don't want somebody to not have a fun time doing something that they were looking forward to, like doing your Christmas tree.
Yes.
Decorating your Christmas tree. But all of a sudden, I wasn't having a problem and you were having a problem with it, with me, because you thought I was the one who had done it.
Yes.
Probably because I was there, not because that was the truth, but
no,
it was, you were still just so, it wasn't showing up. The Christmas tree base wasn't showing up where you thought it could have been. And you just got yourself all agitated to the point where it didn't feel like it could be resolved, and I was the reason that it wasn't being resolved.
It wasn't.
We were already in this stage, and it's oh, what?
Yes.
Pull me in with you, and then all of a sudden it's this is the problem.
Yes.
Because you're mad at me.
Yes.
And then I'm with you back in the accelerated stage.
Yes. That's kind of what I do. I pull people into my escalation cycle so they start going up too. So after acceleration, it is peak.
Can I ask you something though?
Yeah.
It just for future reference, you're saying I pull somebody up with me into the escalation phase. What could I, as the person standing by, do not to be pulled into that escalation phase? Is there something you can do?
Yes, we'll talk about that later after we go through the whole cycle, because
that would be something I'd really like to know.
Well, because the cycle isn't so straightforward, or we do a little hump.
Bell curve.
There's a lot of it gets really complicated, which is why I'm doing this video.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with peak, but remind me, we'll put a little pin in it. Remind me that I will talk about how to kind of help.
Oh, don't aggravate me with the pin. That might be my trigger, putting a pin in it.
Put a pin in it.
Okay, so we get to the peak.
So you get to the peak, which is the pinnacle. It is, the behavior is clearly out of control. There's property destruction. There's running away behavior. There's physical violence. A lot of yelling. For me, mine is super hyper focus.
Yeah, you can't get her out of the thought anymore.
No.
This is what has to happen.
Yeah.
And come hell or high water, and I don't care what has to happen, who needs to die to make this happen, because this will happen.
Yes. So this is very much my hyper focus.
And then you're stuck and locked into it.
This is the stuck.
Yeah.
And so for like the peak, it can last for as ever long as the person is able to keep up that energy, because it takes and expels a lot of energy. It's not fun afterwards, but it does expel a lot of energy.
And watching it with the person, or experiencing it with the person, or getting yourself while you're watching it also into a peak can be disastrous.
Yes.
But if you don't really know what's going on, it's easy to get there. And there's lots of shouting on several different levels with different people involved.
Yes.
So that's, I think, also probably why it doesn't look so linear, like the pretty little escalation cycle bell curve does. But
yes,
if you can pull away, then you see that.
Yeah. So when they are done with whatever their peak behavior is, they immediately move into the de-escalation phase. But there's kind of a tidbit note between peak and de-escalation, is that external modes of control may be needed to exit the peak phase. So external modes of control range from a variety of things. It just basically means that something outside of the person needs to enter the situation so the person can regain some form of control over their own body, whether that is restraining, medication, a distress tolerance box,
a bucket full of ice water,
any kind of distress tolerance.
I've never tried it, but I always thought that would be just like, if I could only throw a bucket of ice water on someone.
It works.
Stop.
No.
Oh, it does?
No, I have no idea. I've never done it.
I think it would just make things worse, but
it works in animated things. I mean,
exactly.
surely that totally replicates real life.
But in that peak phase, like you had said, you kind of get hyper focused. What happened with the Christmas tree base is that then all of a sudden it's stop everything. I don't care if we're doing dinner. I don't care what's happening. I'm going to the store.
Yes.
I am going to the store
to get a new tree.
You're coming with me. And I don't care if you're ready or not. You're coming with me because this was your fault originally. And then you're on a mission and I want to support you. It does seem a little bit like, if I don't comply, something
else is going to happen.
Something bad will happen. But I don't think that's a really good way to deal with your kind of peak. What's probably better would be for me to remove myself completely. Is that an external input? Like you were saying, something else might need to happen for the peak to be an intervention. Is removing myself completely, even if that means I need to leave the house and go on a drive?
I think at that moment, like if we're talking about my instance and my peak, no, that would have, I think, caused the peak. Worse. Yeah, would have made it worse. It would have caused and by making it worse, it's not like it can go up anymore. It just would prolong it.
Okay.
Because they're at the top of their behavior. So if they say, "Oh, I'm going to be worse," it's kind of like they can't get worse. They could just make it last longer.
I feel with you, you need to ride this out with me so I can get going out of this feeling sooner. It's like a little bit of distress
tolerance,
intolerance. I'm distressed and I'm not going to do anything.
I'll talk about like when is a good time to walk away from the situation if you're watching someone having an escalation cycle, and kind of how to behave if someone's in an escalation cycle, because I know it will seem counterintuitive. Like it's not what people would typically and naturally do.
So the de-escalation with that Christmas tree base example, I know when you're in de-escalation because it's all about can-do mode. This will get done. She goes to great lengths. You go to great lengths to make it happen. I mean, you can make anything happen if you want it to happen. It's oftentimes, now looking back, in de-escalation. You know what needs to happen. You know what you want. You're very clear. You're motivated. And it happens. And by golly, we drove out and we found that Christmas tree. I think almost the exact one.
It was the same Christmas tree.
On sale for a very low hit cost. And within an hour and a half, we were back in the living room decorating that Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And everything was fine. And I think what was neat about this time with the Christmas tree, being in the car with you, you were very safe. By that point,
by the time I was in the car, I was in de-escalation.
Exactly. Because also, I think, does it help to actually have to do a rote memory activity like driving where you know, especially if someone's with you? I mean, this can't be crazy driving.
Yeah.
But being in the car on a mission and needing to do something very safe and organized. Can that help?
I think for me it does. It really also does depend on like the person. So in de-escalation, I tend to have de-escalation differently than other people. So I don't necessarily recommend driving because typically the person is confused, disoriented, tired. They would deny responsibility of anything that happened. They tend to plea or bargain with anyone that they have hurt or any property they've done. So when someone's confused, disoriented, and tired, that's not a time to be driving. Right. I definitely have a very different de-escalation because of how many times I've done therapy directed towards stopping my escalation cycle.
Right.
And so my peaks aren't as big anymore either.
Right. And you're more on a mission. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think you've always been more on a mission.
Yes.
Even if it's to solve the problem, not if it was a thing that was missing, but a misunderstanding or something you do focus on solving the problem.
Yes. And when I talk about like plea and bargaining, like this is a time if you're watching it or you were someone hurt in an escalation cycle, don't take that plea or that bargain. Don't necessarily believe them. Not that they're not coming from a good place with it. It's just in this moment, they're doing anything they can to kind of get out of responsibility, to kind of forget that the peak incident happened or the acceleration incident happened. So their brain is trying to like make it okay for them because now they're sitting with feelings of shame and kind of guilt. And so they're not trying to be like outright manipulative, at least in the cases I've seen or that I've done. There are definitely people who will be manipulative in this situation on purpose. But I have typically found that these are kind of like accidental manipulation from the brain trying to kind of make itself feel better and trying to make the person that the brain is housed in feel better because it doesn't want the neurotransmitters.
Yeah. And I did see that you in on our search for the new Christmas tree were starting to think about like I needed to get something to eat before we could leave on this mission. And you didn't want to let me have food. And you said, oh, you can eat it in the car. And while I was in the car, you were kind of looking at me and you were starting to kind of be like, wow, this is your own fault that you need to eat.
Yeah.
And you were kind of blaming me for being late to get to the store. And I was just kind of like, I need food if I'm going to go out and I haven't eaten for 6 hours. So this is happening. So you kind of wanted to get into it with me, but I think you were still, you were conflicted with what you were doing, and you saw that there was some confusing stuff going on.
So when, not necessarily confronting, but when you're talking to the person about the peak incidents and the acceleration incidents, you do not do it in de-escalation. And you know they're still in de-escalation when they re-trigger because of it.
Well, or like I could tell it wasn't a good time for me to say, you hurt my feelings and you need to apologize. It was more of, I could tell that you were trying to put together what was going on, and you were still justifying in your mind why I was sitting in the car eating.
Yeah.
instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That was, totally over the top for me to make you eat in the car. It was, don't make my car dirty or,
Yeah.
or, it's your own fault that you're eating. So it's still kind of,
why didn't you eat earlier?
Yeah, that kind of thing. But the nice thing was then you did, from that conversation, once we had the Christmas tree on the way back, come to recovery. So all within an hour and a half. And that was really sweet and really nice, getting to recovery.
So after de-escalation, the person will enter recovery phase. And this is the very last phase. Yay, you've survived. And this one, the person
with you who witnessed it also survived.
So this is when the person's generally subdued. They're kind of back at baseline. This is the moment you talk about the peak incident. And honestly, for de-escalation, it really does depend on the person. What kind of other therapies have they had? Have they had any therapies? How good are they at emotional regulation to kind of get down into de-escalation? So, I mean, it can take anywhere from, I think, how long were we in the car? 20 minutes?
Well, the whole trip, I mean, once the tree was bought, and once
I was at the store, I was in recovery.
Yeah, but you didn't start talking to me until we were back on the road. And that's, I think, because now when that happens, you're much more reflective.
Yeah.
And you're much more like, God, how bad was this one? And that's really great new language for a mom to hear.
Yeah.
Having gone through a lot of those for so many years, to hear your child reflecting. And then I very simply, also having learned my lessons about how to approach these, is to just start with real open and honest communication about feelings. Like, gosh, it hurt. I felt hurt when you did that. And it was really unkind of you to rush me about food and to blame you. And they're just my expressions of my feelings. So there's nothing really for you to hook into to re-escalate or to re-trigger, because I'm explaining how it made me feel being in that. And for a long time, I would use the blame and shame approach. You did this and you did this and you made me do this and you made me do that, which really would only get me back into an escalation cycle at the beginning. But I think we've both recognized that in recovery, there's so much repair that can happen in open communication about a hurtful situation that can really make a bonding.
Yes.
So I encourage to stick it out with the person in recovery and hold back on having these feelings of, you're going to pay for making me feel so awful, which is a real strong urge.
Yeah, it is a strong urge.
Oh, you were so horrible.
Yeah.
But if you are able to say, I got really scared in this situation. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I want to figure out with you how to make a plan so I don't feel scared. So we both know what's going on. Those kind of conversations are so sweet because it builds trust. And not like any of the escalation cycle is a great relationship tool, but I think recovery is a good relationship tool, and we should all try to seek that in any sort of confrontation.
Yes. So before I talk about how you can kind of either mitigate or even stop an escalation cycle, I'm going to preference and say the cycle is messy, it is chaotic, it is lengthy, and it can be traumatic for everyone involved. So this is not oh, you're in calm phase. Oh, you're in trigger.
Yeah,
oh, you're in this one. Oh, you're in here. Okay, we're in peak. Okay, now let's get down.
It's all very confusing. If you can all get to just some sort of recovery at some point when the dust has settled, it's a big ball of hairy, furry mess. But are you going to talk about how to remove yourself from this situation? Because I always wanted to know how to do that, and I didn't do it very successfully.
No, but that's okay. That's okay.
Obviously.
So, in calm, they're in baseline with the trigger. if you can either yourself as the person who's going to be in the escalation cycle know your triggers, like you can either try and stay away from them. I have found that doesn't work all the time. So you work on some DBT, distress tolerance. See my previous videos wherever, probably that way. They're going to be, or that way. That way you can work on, oh, I'm triggered. What can I do to not be triggered anymore?
Yeah, but how do I walk away?
So I'm going to get there. In agitation, in that the third phase, that's when walking away is a good idea.
How do you know when that is? When it's so confusing,
Yes.
It can come and go before you even know it.
Yes.
You pass trigger and you're in acceleration and you missed your window for.
That is why it is so hard to be in an escalation phase, because like as someone watching, you've missed your window and now you're stuck in it.
Okay, but what does the good window look like?
So when the person has...
Like, give me the Christmas tree example.
Christmas tree example. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
You saw that the base wasn't there, and I could have said, let me go look for it.
Yes.
And then never come back.
Well, you could be like, let me go look for it and be in the garage, and you can have said something like, is there something else we can do? Like, I have time to go to the store if needed.
Oh, like I figured out the solution.
No, but you could be like, I'm here. Like,
but
if you
I want to
need me.
leave altogether. I don't want to be needed anymore because you're gonna want to need me, and I don't want to be part of the story anymore.
But I mean, I think that's the thing. What got me, like, that's the moment you go get food. Like, say I'm gonna go look for it, or I need to go get a bite to eat, and
but
then
I didn't know that I was gonna be left deprived of dinner because you didn't even get to it yet.
If you haven't eaten in 6 hours, like that's when you need to go
that was my
eat.
plan to go do. I didn't know I was going to be ripped out of the house to go do this.
But in the agitation, that is when you leave.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go leave.
But you don't say that. You say like, I need to go get some food.
You make up some excuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you are, if you're kind of the person's person, like you're my person, you don't like leave. I
can't leave.
Because that's not going to be good.
Okay. Because you come hunt me down.
No, because an escalation can happen because of that.
Oh, so yeah. That I think I've been in that boat before.
Yeah. Where you leave, and then it's not good either.
Okay.
So like, I know I would have been calm had like,
Could I have given you the your distress box?
Probably.
Then you would have been like, what do you think you're doing?
No, you could be like, you seem like you need this. Like, pick something and do it for 10 minutes. We're taking a 10-minute break. Okay.
But doesn't it work better if you reach for it yourself?
It does work better if I reach for it myself.
Helps very much.
But you can always say like, I need a break. I need 10 minutes to myself.
So the I need, expressing my needs is always, and I keep forgetting to do that. And I think that that's a really valid point. Just like within Recover, when you're talking about how I feel while I'm going through this, I need a break. I need to go eat something. I need to think about something else for a minute. Yeah. And I'll be back. I keep forgetting to do that. Yeah. That's a really good strategy.
And then in escalation or the acceleration, you're kind of, I mean, that's another time that you can say like, I need a break. If you're catching it the first time, always use like, I need a break. I need to go get some food. I need a minute. I need to do this. Because if you put it into the I need, the person hopefully feels horrible when they say no. And then I'm like, fine. And so that way, and don't engage during the escalation. So if they're in acceleration and there's some minor kind of behavioral problems like non-compliance, stop talking to them.
Like, don't try to fix that too.
Yeah. If they're being non-compliant, just don't give them any more directions.
If they're also picking their nose during this whole thing and you want to stop picking their nose, they can go in. That's another, pick your battle.
Yeah. I find if it's in an escalation cycle, the best way to not reach peak is not to like walk on eggshells, but to be like, you know your directions, you know this.
Yeah.
Please take a minute and figure what you're going to do out.
Good tips.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When they're in
walking away
peak and you are finding you may need the more extreme modes of external control, like restraining and medication, please go seek like healthcare providers and psychiatrists and stuff like that. Don't try and do that stuff by yourself. It's only going to end up hurting the person who's in the escalation cycle and break all trust.
Or it could hurt you too, right?
Yes.
The person holding, if you're doing it incorrectly, you could get hurt. You
Yes.
could get head bonked and break your nose, or even worse, or could get bit.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, the person who's being held can face serious damages if it's done wrong. And then it does break the trust that you guys would have in anything else. So that is really important. If that does happen, the recovery is like 1,000 times more important if the more extreme external modes of control are needed, especially if the person is in the room.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the escalation cycle. Thank you for being here.
Yes, you're welcome.
In the comments down below, please leave any questions you have about this or any helpful tips you have about how you're able to either leave a situation or are able to kind of circumnavigate that peak so that you don't reach it. Because I know that there's so many tips out there that you can use when you're in trigger or you're in agitation or you're in acceleration that you don't hit peak. But the thing is, if you hit peak, you are going to have the de-escalation. It's a ride. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and gently tap that like button. And remember to be kind, compassionate, and true to you.